Good morning. I'm Public Information Officer Kimberly Edds of the Orange County District Attorney's Office. Thank you so much for being here this morning. I'll give you the lineup of the speakers for the press conference, as well as representatives from Orange County Law Enforcement and the DEA. Speakers will be Orange County District Attorney Todd Spitzer, Riverside County District Attorney Mike Hestron, Matt Capilouto, whose 20-year-old daughter died from fentanyl poisoning, Perla Mendoza, whose 20-year-old son Elijah died from fentanyl poisoning, Amy Neville, whose 14-year-old son Alexander died from fentanyl poisoning. And then it will conclude with the Drug Enforcement Administration Deputy Special Agent in Charge, Kurt Fallon. We're also proud today to be joined by Brea Police Department Chief Adam Hawley, Fountain Valley Police Chief Matthew Shepard, Garden Grove Police Department Chief Tom DeRay, Irvine Police Department Chief Michael Kent, La Habra Police Chief Adam Foster, Tustin Police Chief Stu Greenberg, Orange County Probation Chief Steve Sentman, Orange County District Attorney Bureau of Investigation Chief Paul Walters, Orange County Sheriff's Assistant Sheriff Ken Bermude, and Drug Enforcement Administration Acting Special Agent in Charge Sean Hall. We also have representatives from the Anaheim Police Department, Buena Park Police Department, Cypress Police Department, Fullerton Police Department, La Palma Police Department, Los Alamitos Police Department, Orange Police Department, Seal Beach Police Department, Santa Ana Police Department, Westminster Police Department. The police departments of Costa Mesa, Laguna Beach, and Newport Beach are unable to join us today because they're attending a funeral of a fallen officer from the Newport Beach Police Department. I'll turn it over to District Attorney Todd Spitzer.
Thank you very much and good morning. I cannot thank you enough for being here. I want to thank the law enforcement personnel behind me, those who are here in support in the audience, a lot of the prosecutors and managers who are here from the District Attorney's Office. I'm very, very thankful. This is a very important day, and what it shows is that law enforcement in Orange County is all in. Every single agency is supporting this effort. All the sworn personnel in this county will be behind giving an admonishment going forward, and I'm going to read it to you because it's very, very serious and it's very moving. You are hereby advised that the unlawful manufacture, sale, or furnishing of any controlled substance poses grave health risks to those who ingest it, are exposed to it, or are affected by its manufacture. You are agreeing to plead guilty to, and then we insert the charges. It is extremely dangerous to human life to unlawfully manufacture, sell, or furnish any controlled substance. In addition to the danger posed by the suspected controlled substance being sold or furnished, unbeknownst to the seller or furnisher, the controlled substance may contain other controlled substances, such as fentanyl, that significantly increase the threat to human life. If you manufacture, sell, or furnish any controlled substance and a person dies as a result of ingesting it, being exposed to it, or its manufacture, you may be charged with murder. Do you understand? I want you to just look at these pictures. It's heartbreaking. Some of them are just kids, 14 years old, some a little older, but every single one of them is no longer here. They're never going to celebrate another birthday, graduate from college, get married, or become a parent. Things that I have been blessed and my wife has been blessed, and so many people on the stage and all of you we're talking to have been so fortunate to see in your lifetime. But these parents will not, these children will not. These parents will never again be able to say in person, but instead to a gravesite, I love you, Mom, I love you, Dad. They died from fentanyl poisoning, and I picked that word very specifically. When I met with the parents before I was on board and working on this policy, I met with the parents who have suffered these tragic losses, for them to tell me and explain their stories. Although I had known that Mr. Hestron in Riverside County had and is a leader in this, and he had been talking to people like me in other counties as other elected DAs, and I knew he was all in. But I personally didn't understand it. And then they gave me this bracelet, and their website, and it says it's not an overdose. And I've been a police officer, I've been a prosecutor for many, many years. I had to really think about that. Because quite frankly, 30 years ago when I became a police officer, a reserve for LAPD, when somebody died from taking drugs, we put that into they're a drug user, it's an overdose, close the case. That is an incredible lack of sensitivity, and it's not the truth. It's not the truth. I'm just holding up a penny. The amount of fentanyl that can kill is the amount of fentanyl that can cover Abe Lincoln's nose. It's that tiny. It's that insignificant. It's that de minimis. And that is why, was it? No. Was that been on the whole time? Yes. Oh, should I start all over? No. So we're here today to talk about fentanyl, but you heard in the admonishment, when we are in court, we're planning on and asking any time any drug is sold that admonishment will be given, because almost every drug today that is being sold on the black market contains fentanyl. I want to thank the Assistant Sheriff for being here, and the Sheriff in particular, Don Barnes, for his leadership, our police chiefs, the Drug Enforcement Administration, other law enforcement leaders. I want to thank the brave mothers and fathers who you're going to hear from who came here to speak about their kids. Man, I told them earlier, and I'll tell them forever, they're the real heroes here. They're the advocates for their children. They're the ones that are reframing this public policy issue so people understand it's not an overdose. It's poisoning. And they educated me, and they educated law enforcement. We have seen in Orange County a 1,000% increase over the last 5 years as a result of overdoses and deaths from fentanyl, intentionally being disguised as other less potent drugs. Statewide, fentanyl deaths have increased 1,513%. 1,513%. Rich, poor, black, white, brown, men, women, children, hardcore drug users, first-time drug users who are experimenting have died as a result of fentanyl. Currently in the Orange County Coroner's Office, there's 450 drug-related deaths that are pending toxicology. And I'm going to tell you that it's probably going to be true, consistent with everything we're seeing, that those deaths are already going to be and are related to fentanyl. Fentanyl is reportedly 60 to 100 times more potent than morphine, and fentanyl analogs may be as much as 10,000 times more potent. So a mere 2 telegrams, Abe Lincoln's nose, is enough to kill you. And according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, people under the age of 50 are likely to die from drugs than any other cause, including heart disease and cancer. Why? It's cheap. Fentanyl's cheap. It's easy to get. And if you look at, if you think about importation, right? You think of the bricks you see of cocaine and methamphetamine, kilos, right? The amount of fentanyl that it takes to addict somebody and become a addicted drug user, it's so much easier to hide, import, and deal with on the street because it's such a small quantity. But what do? Look at the poster. They take already understood street drugs that are legitimate drugs but sold on the street, like OxyContin, Xanax, and Percocet, and they mass produce it with fentanyl. So people are buying these street drugs thinking they're buying a Percocet or a Xanax, something they could take, and maybe they get high, or it does whatever it does for them, but it doesn't kill them. And they think it's what they were buying, and they end up dead. And I'm not gonna I'm joining Mike Hestron today and the other DAs in the state that are being aggressive about this. I'm not gonna let drug dealers get away with murder. It's not gonna happen anymore. It's not gonna happen if we can help it. So I've directed the prosecutors in the Orange County DA's office to offer that advisement. The one I read you is one of those advisements, and the police officers are gonna give that in the field, and we're gonna do it whenever we can. And hopefully with body-worn camera and the like, we're gonna record it and we're gonna videotape it. And then at a future trial, God forbid, there's a future trial where somebody is being charged with selling or manufacturing and somebody dies, we're gonna offer that into evidence. And the jury's gonna see that. They're gonna see that that person was told, if you give, manufacture, sell drugs, and it has fentanyl, we're telling you right now, at a prior occasion, you could be charged with murder. We do that with Watson advisements in driving under the influence. We say, do you understand, Mr. Spitzer, that you're being charged with driving under the influence of alcohol? Do you understand that it's dangerous to drive with alcohol and or drugs in your system? Do you understand that in the future, if you are arrested and charged with driving under the influence and you killed somebody, that the fact that we told you that driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol was dangerous and could kill, and you did, and you do, we could charge you with murder. And we're using the same technique as we do with DUI. Now, to be completely transparent, there's a law in California for DUI that requires that admonition. It's called a Watson advisement. The efforts in the state legislature to get that law passed for fentanyl failed in the legislature. And if the California legislature, which I was a member for 6 years, if they don't want to be aggressive about all these young people that are dying and people are overdosing, then Mr. Hestron, Todd Spitzer, and the other DAs who are willing to do this will. And shame on the state legislature, because the state legislature has an epidemic. They understand a pandemic, but they certainly need to understand they've got an epidemic when it comes to fentanyl. So Mr. Hestron's going to talk about what he's done in his county. It's been a great journey, but it's far from over. We're going to be making case law. We're going to be arguing. We're going to be trying to convince judges. We're going to be trying to convince juries. But let me just tell you something, having been a prosecutor on and off for the last 30 years, that's what we do. That's what we do. We fight for victims. We fight for victims. We try to stop future crimes from happening, and we try to save lives. Everybody here, that's what we do. We try to save lives. This is pathetic. This is horrible. This is beyond imagination. I have 2 kids. I could never imagine in my wildest dream, oh my God, I can't even believe I'm saying it, where I might be faced with losing one of my kids. Like, I could never recover from that as a parent. And it has completely hit home for me. And God bless you for being here. And I know everybody's really interested in hearing your personal stories. So with that, I want to introduce my really, really good friend. Thank you, that's fine. I want to introduce my really good friend and just a phenomenal leader, District Attorney from Riverside County, Michael Hestron. Thank you, Todd.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Hestron. I'm the Riverside County District Attorney. I don't want to repeat everything that DA Spitzer said. And first of all, I want to thank Todd Spitzer and the Orange County DA's office for holding this press conference, for inviting me here to share a little bit about what we've done in Riverside County. I'll just give you a quick history. It started for me the same way it started for Todd Spitzer, and that is parents came to my office and were talking to me about what happened, their experience, and how they lost a child to fentanyl. And like many people, I wasn't attuned to what was really happening. I sort of thought about drug use and deaths related to drug use in a certain way, and that way was outdated because everything's changed. Fentanyl has changed the entire nature of drug use and drug dealing. And let me explain what I mean by that. In Riverside County in 2016, there were 2 fentanyl-related deaths. 2. This year, we're on pace to have between 500 and 600 fentanyl-related deaths. The deaths are doubling every year. And so when the parents, Matt Capilouto, who you're going to hear from next, came to speak to me, it did hit home. But I started looking into it, hit me on an emotional level. I'm also a parent. But when I looked at the data, there's something wrong. Fentanyl is so lethal that it's poisoning our communities. That's what's happening. 2 milligrams of fentanyl is fatal. There are 5,000 milligrams of fentanyl in a teaspoon. Last month in Riverside, the city of Riverside, not far from here, 21 kilos of fentanyl, pure fentanyl, were recovered. Think about that. Think about the lethality that's been unleashed here in our region and in our cities and in our communities. And we've got to do something to push back. We've got to fight back. That's what we do. And so I decided for our office that we weren't going to do things the old way. And we started about a year ago putting together in-depth investigations to prosecute drug dealers for murder. So far, we've filed 7 cases. 3 more are about to be filed. Shortly, we'll have 10 murder cases pending. And all I can tell you, I can't sit here and say that that's solved the problem. It's not going to solve the problem. We're facing a crisis in the country. Every single community across this country is facing a fentanyl crisis. And it's time that we wake up. And it's time that we take a stand for parents, for people that we represent, for our neighbors. Enough. So the prosecution side, then there's the outreach side, there's the public education side. I will tell you this for Riverside County, I see everybody that's behind me. The reason why we've been able to put these cases together is because in Riverside County, we're absolutely united in law enforcement. Every single agency, the sheriff, the DA's office, the probation department, we're all united. There's no one that's not on board. And so it's great to see all the leaders behind me united in one effort. And we're going to have to fight this scourge that is taking so many of our sons and daughters and loved ones. And so with that, I want to introduce Matt Capilouto to tell you his story. And obviously, if you have any questions for me or for DA Spitzer, we'll be here to answer any questions. Matt?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I'm not quite as good at speaking off the cuff, so I prepared something that I'll read to you this morning. I'd like to thank Mr. Spitzer for inviting me to speak today. I appreciate the opportunity to be included in the discussion surrounding this issue and your diligence in attacking this problem. It is vital to our communities and the health and safety of our children. 2 years ago, if you had told me that I would be traveling the country, speaking to hundreds, thousands of parents, legislators, district attorneys, congresspeople, and heads of state, I would have said you're nuts. But 2 years ago, I couldn't have even considered that I'd lose my daughter, Alex, my beautiful, intelligent daughter with such an incredible future ahead of her. In a flash, she was gone. She was killed, taken from us, poisoned by a drug dealer who this very day is still walking the streets. So for the last 2 years, I have fought alongside thousands of parents, family members, and community stakeholders every single day to change that devastating reality. Now, I know our fight can't bring Alex back. This fight isn't grounded in anger or revenge. She's gone. And while that will never seem real to me and my family, her memory and our collective commitment to ensuring no more parents suffer as we do fuels us in this fight. 2 days before Christmas in 2019, Alex bought what she thought was oxycodone from a drug dealer who she found on Snapchat. The pill she took was fake and filled with a fatal amount of fentanyl. My wife found her dead in her bedroom. Shortly after that horrible day, we learned that 3 other young people in our community within 10 days had died in similar circumstances. Many more have died since. Officially, Alex's death was marked as an accidental overdose, but she was poisoned. Same for the other kids, poisoned. The word overdose does not accurately describe this crime. These drug dealers, these purveyors of death, are well aware of the poison they are handing to your friends, your neighbors, your children, your children's friends, your family. They make a conscious decision to sell a potentially life-ending fake pill to a human being without regard for the repercussions. Well, me, you, all of us here today represent the repercussions that are currently lacking. We have the opportunity to create real accountability for the actions of drug dealers that are literally murdering thousands of Americans. Earlier this year, we asked the state of California to enact Alexandra's Law, which would address implied malice for drug deaths similar to drunk driving deaths from the 1981 People v. Watson case. For example, under Alexandra's Law, should someone be arrested for selling fentanyl and the drug dealer would be given a warning of the danger of their behavior. Should that same individual continue to sell and someone dies, he or she could be charged with murder. The warning would serve as proof that they were aware of the deadly consequences of their actions. Unfortunately, that law did not pass. But our fight does not end there, and we are continuing to make progress. Riverside County District Attorney Mike Hestron has found ways to prosecute these cases as homicides. Riverside County has seen an 800% increase in fentanyl poisonings over the past 5 years. In 2020, there were more than 200 fentanyl poisonings countywide. The county is on pace to suffer between 500 to 600 fentanyl poisonings in 2021. Those are astronomical numbers. The DEA has reported counterfeit pills coming from Mexican cartels using illicit fentanyl imported from China are estimated to have a lethal dose of the drug nearly 40% of the time. That means if you're buying what you think is an opioid from a drug dealer on the street or social media, there's an almost 50-50 chance that you will be dead within minutes of ingesting that pill. Dead like my daughter Alexandra, like thousands of others. The worst part about that is the dealer selling that drug in many cases knows this as well. They aren't innocent. And DA Hestron is using their knowledge of the danger to prosecute these drug dealers for murder. It is a step in the right direction, and we as a family, as part of the drug-induced homicide movement, appreciate DA Hestron's effort and now Orange County District Attorney Todd Spitzer's effort. It is important to impart knowledge of the dangers of buying these drugs on the street. It is crucial that we are having conversations about this truly horrifying epidemic with our families, our friends, our neighbors, and particularly our youth and young adults. We invite you to visit druginducedhomicide.org to contact your elected officials, senators, congresspeople, and beg them to listen to law enforcement. Here are the key points. These are not overdoses. They are poisonings. These drug dealers know the danger they are peddling. They should be held criminally accountable. This issue is about commitment towards saving lives, and nearly 2 years ago, I made that commitment. I stand here for Alex and the victims whose family members are here today, and the thousands of victims of a wholly preventable crime. I ask that you join us in this fight. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to introduce Perla Mendoza. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both of our district attorney's office. I'm so grateful to the men and women in law enforcement that are supporting this advisement, to our DA's office and the DEA, who is working hard to stop this epidemic. Most importantly, I'd like to thank God for giving me the strength to be up here today and represent my son, Daniel Elijah Figueroa, and all the other young men and women that have passed due to this poison, fentanyl. Losing my son has been the worst thing I've ever experienced. And I know the other parents here can attest to that. Thankfully, I stand here today as an advocate and as the voice of my son in an effort to stop these deaths from happening to other families. Drug dealers, you're ruining families' lives. You're taking advantage of people who are naive or maybe not well, like my son. My son struggled with depression, and he turned to Xanax as a way of coping. He was prescribed them at one point. On September 16th, 2020, after reaching out to his doctor for medication to help with sleep, his doctor was reluctant to prescribe anything to him because of his addiction. So he went onto Snapchat, found someone who he deemed trustworthy, who was selling what appeared to be prescription medication. And on the night of September 15th, he had someone deliver him a pill. One pill killed my son. One pill. I don't want this to happen to anyone else in our community. I think this advisement is so wonderful that you guys are willing to do, but it's also like the least we could do. You know, we're giving you drug dealers an opportunity to change your ways. I don't think anyone wants to be a killer, but if you do, then you deserve to go to jail. In any case, thank you so much. Parents, this can happen to any of us. My son was a good boy. He had a heart of gold. He had dreams of helping others. He was talented. He was funny. And he was a loving son, my only son. He was born on Christmas Eve, my Christmas gift. I'll never get to spend that holiday with him again because someone deceived him to death. So I hope that any parents that are listening will have conversations with their children about fentanyl, about this drug epidemic. Love your kids and just know that no one is immune to this nasty poison that's out there trying to take over our young people. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you for the work that you're already doing. And thank you to all these parents who I'm seeing here live and in person for the first time, that maybe we've been connecting over Facebook, or maybe we've seen each other once or twice at other events. I'm sorry we have reason to be here. It's every day I wish it could have been somebody else. Who? I don't know. But just, not us, right? My name is Amy Neville. And these days, I am duty-bound to educate and help get the message out to others about the dangers of fentanyl and other chemicals that have invaded the illicit drug market. Last year, my 14-year-old son, right here, Alexander, perished from a single counterfeit pill containing fentanyl. Alexander was a dopey little middle schooler, just graduated middle school, armed with a skateboard, had a very full life ahead of him. Unfortunately, Alex had been experimenting with cannabis, and he found OxyContin through a dealer he connected with on Snapchat. A dealer that is also connected to 2 other deaths in Orange County. Coincidentally, Hector, right here, is right next to Alex, was the 3rd that I know of. His mom's here today, and I'm grateful for our friendship that we forged over this last year. But our boys who never met in life are forever connected in death through fentanyl and this drug dealer. Since Alex's death, we learned that he wasn't taking Oxy at all. Pretty much anyone purchasing illicit pills and powders are not getting what they think they're getting, as we've already heard. The pills are all counterfeits with fentanyl or methamphetamine, while the powders are mostly fentanyl. In 2020, the CDC reported 70,000 deaths attributed to illicit fentanyl, and this year, we're already outpacing that number. This admonishment is necessary for a lot of reasons already mentioned by the other speakers. To me, this admonishment is a necessary part of the larger conversation about illicit fentanyl and the shifting drug landscape. I've been having this conversation with adolescents, parents, teachers, law enforcement officers, various organizations, and lawmakers. But there is an audience I can't get through to yet. That audience includes distributors and those with substance use disorders. Often, these two can go hand in hand, and makes it almost impossible to break through to them. This admonishment ensures that the conversations happen. Perhaps it will save lives. I can't say enough about how unfortunate it is that we are at this point. I believe that the only way to significantly drive down drug deaths is to drive down demand. The fentanyl conversation needs to happen in every home in the nation. Each of us needs to look out for our friends and our family members. Most people are not using, but the numbers tell us that each one of you knows someone who is using or soon will. I want this conversation to be mandatory everywhere. Today, I will settle for a mandatory admonishment for distributors. It was too late for my family by the time I learned about illicit fentanyl. But it seems very unlikely that illicit distributors are unfamiliar with the deadliness of this issue. No matter who you are, if you're dealing illicit drugs, you already know what's happening. It's been happening for years. There's really no more excuses. A normal person who would have been told something that they were doing could unintentionally kill another person would stop, right? The truth is that some people aren't getting this message, and worse, some people are ignoring that message. I believe that when people intentionally ignore the message that their behavior is unintentionally killing other people, then they should be considered culpable. Again, this admonishment is a necessary part of the conversation, but it shouldn't be the end of it. Ultimately, every person using or involved in distribution requires an alternative. The issues that bring people to fentanyl include mental health, economic security, and other reasons. It is my hope that we can continue to build an infrastructure and provide help to those that really need it. My son Alex died without getting to have this conversation. I don't want any more people to die. If this admonishment convinces a single distributor to find a different job, then it will have been a success. Thank you.
Good morning. Over 93,000 people died last year of drug-caused deaths in the United States. That's 257 people a day. And that's the largest number of drug-related deaths ever recorded. Counterfeit prescription pills containing fentanyl, but marketed as legitimate prescription pills, are everywhere. They're on the street, they're on college and high school campuses, and they're on social media platforms. Pills have been pressed at labs in Mexico, and these labs are illegal and uncontrolled labs. They're brought into the United States by criminal drug networks. I can't stress enough that you cannot tell the difference between a legitimate prescription pill and a counterfeit pill by sight. Can't do it. As Matt is said better than I will, by our research, 2 out of every 5 pills seized in 2020 across the country contain potentially lethal amounts of fentanyl, over 40%. Meanwhile, technology has changed the retail market and made opioids more accessible and readily available. Young people can order up pills on their smartphones and have them delivered right to their door, and you've already heard about this. Our message to the public and to the parents is to be aware of the danger of synthetic drugs, especially fake pills. My advice is do not take a pill unless it's prescribed by your doctor or you get it at a drugstore yourself. DEA pursues any network that distributes fentanyl, and our hope is that Californians will spread the word that one pill can kill. Thank you.
Just say your name. Say your name and your title.
Okay, yeah. My name is Kurt Fallon. I'm the Deputy Special Agent in charge of the DEA Los Angeles Field Division.
Do I have any questions at this time?
Without the warning? Could you do it without the admonishment just because it's widely known that, fentanyl kills? Or do you need this warning?
So we have 7 filed cases. None have gone to trial yet, and I believe there's been one that pled guilty, but none have gone to trial yet. The answer, though, to your last question is we can do it without the admonishment. It's just more difficult. We have to use text conversations that maybe we collect through the evidentiary process, other circumstantial evidence. And so I think the admonishment is really a common sense, reasonable first step in making sure that people that are going to do this can be held accountable and know they're going to be held accountable. Put on notice that if you continue to do this, you're going to get prosecuted for murder.
And on the warning you were talking about, on the DUI warning, that comes after a conviction, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
You have to sign forms. It sounded like when you guys were saying that this will be, even if you're kind of talking to a cop and you're not arrested, they could give you that warning, like you said, on a camera, and you could use that. Is that how you're using it, or is that the theory?
Well, I'll let DA Spitzer talk about Orange County, but in Riverside County, what we're doing is we're at the time of conviction during a plea on a fentanyl-related drug charge, we are requiring that defendants acknowledge the dangers, and we have an admonishment that we read. There are efforts to do in-field admonishments, and that's being done by law enforcement officers, our sheriff's department, sort of separate from the DA's office, but again, we're united, and so we're on the same page.
And on that admonishment, do they sign a form at the end of the, does it have to be just a dealer, or if it be possession, you have to do that admonishment, or is it just for dealers?
It's anybody involved with a charge that's related to the drug trade in fentanyl.
Okay, so it could be possession, you still have to do that.
Yes.
So, hold on, Vicki, real quick. Let me just clarify 2 points. Mr. Hestrin is doing his admonishment for fentanyl-related offenses. I have chosen at this time to expand it to all drugs because of the fact that we're seeing fentanyl, as you heard from the special agent, in all drug trade. So that's point 1. So I'm dovetailing on everything he's done, and I'm expanding it just a little bit here. And then let me talk about a case I just personally have recently reviewed where a teenager, well, he was in his early 20s, he was driving with his girlfriend, he was drunk, he crashed, she died. In his prior conviction for DUI, the deputy sheriff in a different county, LA, had admonished him that drinking and driving is dangerous, and if you kill somebody, you could be charged with murder. As a result of that in-field admonishment, we charged him in the new case of taking her life with murder. In the past, before that, the most we could get was gross vehicular manslaughter, which is a 10-year max sentence. And with good time, work time, it's 5 years, which I've prosecuted those myself in this office. So taking the life of another without this admonishment in the DUI context generally is a 5-year prison term for killing somebody. And I think that's unacceptable, which is why we've made such advent in terms of DUI. We need to do the same thing here. So we're going to be very creative. I mean, he's the pioneer in Southern California, and we're just going to continue to, I mean, we're going to all be watching very closely how his prosecutions go in his county. No. This is like a depraved heart. In other words, the fact that you know it, you have the mental state that I know it, that it's dangerous to sell fentanyl, and I'm going to do it anyway. You don't have the premeditated intent to kill. It's not like you're selling to kill, but you sure know what the consequences are, and they're a direct result of your drug selling.
So would it be secondary?
Secondary, yeah.
Let me comment on that. Most of the murder charges so far have been second degree. However, at least one of ours have been held to answer for first degree murder on the theory of poisoning. And so it just depends on the specific circumstances of the case. If we can prove poisoning under the law, we can charge first degree murder in certain circumstances. So they're going to be first and sometimes second degree murders.
What are the sentencing ranges on second degree?
15 years to life, and first degree murder is 25 years to life.
While you're there, the question I was going to have is about tracking this back. How difficult is it to put that pill in the dealer's hand or in his pocket or know exactly who was responsible?
It is a challenge. I'm not going to stand here and say this is easy and every case we can prosecute this in every case. We cannot. There are some cases where we don't have the evidence. Mr. Capilouto's daughter's case, for example. However, there's state prosecutions. There's also federal prosecutions. So we have a very close relationship with our federal prosecutors, and we're going to work together with our federal prosecutors as well. To answer your question specifically, we have to use circumstantial evidence. We have to use text messages, chats on these social media platforms. But we can, with surprising success, track back some of these transactions. I mean, if you've got text messages and those communications, and and also security camera videos and things like that, we can piece together what happened, and where it's there, we're going to be very aggressive.
The other thing I just want to say is there's a jury instruction about the weight of circumstantial evidence versus direct evidence. And the jury is free, if they believe the circumstantial evidence, to give it as much weight as direct evidence. Circumstantial evidence is something we kind of live and thrive on in most of our cases anyway. And there's nothing wrong with circumstantial evidence. It can be incredibly powerful and tell that story. Yes, sir.
Sir, you're talking here about prosecution, and there are too many families who lost their loved ones. Zach, Brown, Asians, everybody. But what you are not talking about prevention in high schools, colleges, and then the second question I have, what is the responsibility of the federal government, because the drug cartels in Mexico, there are too many, and no one has stopped them.
So let me take the first question, and then I'll ask the special agent to address your second question with respect to what the international effort is and the crossing borders issues are. Mr. Hestron said it earlier, you cannot deal with this with prosecution in and of itself. We're not going to be able to prosecute our way out of this issue. You heard the plea that every family needs to have this conversation around their dinner table. And I talk about drugs with my two kids all the time because this is what I do. And I'm very, very concerned about both experimentation and reliance on drugs. And so you have to have education and prevention. It's all part of the triage, if you will, about addressing this issue. It's never going to be solved with prosecution. However, what Mr. Hestron and I do and the other law enforcement agencies, I'm hoping that this will provide deterrence. So in other words, if you know that if you have this admonishment or you're selling drugs, you heard Mr. Hestron say, sometimes to Chip's comment, sometimes we might go after a murder even without the admonishment. It depends on what our evidence is. However, the admonishment helps a juror understand that this person had a particular mental state. And what I want to send a very strong message today is, if you're going to deal drugs, you know substantially there's fentanyl in those drugs. You have a 50-50 chance that there is. You're aware of it, and if you do it, somebody's going to die. And I want that for drug dealers, manufacturers, but also the end user. Like we're bringing attention to the fact that people are using drugs in our county and they're dying because they think, as indicated by the poster, that they're buying what they think the drug is. My father was a pharmacist. I worked in his pharmacy all through high school. And I'm very familiar with the stamps and how, capsules are made and tablets and all that. These drugs look exactly like that with the same numbers and indicia that you would think it's OxyContin or something else because it looks identical. And that's exactly what it's supposed to do. That's exactly what the end user is thinking they're buying, and they're dying. So this is an equal admonishment to people using drugs today. And what you heard from the special agent is, unless you get it from your doctor or pharmacist, you got a loaded gun in your hand. You're playing Russian roulette with your own life. And nobody wants to see that happen.
Can I comment?
Yeah, of course, Michael.
I want to sit just, your question's a good one. Not that that's a bad question, but your question about prevention. And so the prosecution part of what we are doing in Riverside County is one part of our effort. We've launched a public awareness campaign through our social media platforms. We're creating videos to get the word out to the general public. More importantly, my prosecutors and my victim advocates are going into high schools every single day and presenting to young people about the dangers. And our message is very clear, just like DA Spitzer said, there's no safe way to use drugs anymore. Those days are over. If there ever was a safe way, there's no safe way anymore. It's going to result in your death. And that's the message we're sending, and we're urging parents to have these tough conversations right now.
So just very quickly, you're right. We do have a responsibility to the American public, the federal government, the DEA, to investigate drug trafficking organizations that move fentanyl and that sell fentanyl. And there is no higher priority in terms of drugs that the DEA is looking at nationwide. So we're doing proactive and reactive cases in conjunction with our law enforcement partners. And we put cases on international dealers that are based in Mexico. These things do take some time. So in the meantime, we also, like these gentlemen said, we want to get the word out about prevention and just get the, like I said, the message before, if one pill can kill, it's pretty simple. Get the word out to the high school, get the word out to the colleges, and let's attack it from both ends.
All right, last question, please. Anything? We're good? Yeah, go ahead, Chip. Oh, was somebody else?
Riverside is the first one in Southern California. Is there anywhere else around the country where they've been doing this and had a successful prosecution?
You know, it's spotted. There's some patches around the country, and I think Riverside County is the first large county in the state of California to do it. There's a few others around the country. I don't know the exact. I'll be honest. I'm busy enough with California, but there's certainly prosecutors around the country that are following the same path and doing what we're doing.
I know I had it, Chip, and we can probably follow up with you. There was a survey done for me of, so San Diego gives an advisement orally in court. San Joaquin County, we couldn't get complete information, but it looks like they're advising as well. And Yolo County, in taking their plea, is also getting an advisement in writing. So as Mr. Hestron said, it's pretty spotty. And I think that's why it's so important for the legislature to pass this as a matter of law, as a statute, so that every county then would move forward all uniformly at all 58 counties. So again, I'm asking the legislature to do this, but I'm not going to wait for the legislature to do it. All right, thank you so much for coming today. Thank you so much.